Greetings, Tony Mobley here. Greetings, Tony Mobley here. I am actually happy to be here with you guys tonight, and I'm having a very good friend, Shontelle Jackson. And she is going to be here with me today. And I want to first say thank you all so much for being here with us today. My normal script has disappeared. And so I would normally go into how we are sharing with our internet radio in Cincinnati, Ohio. And I would tell you about all of the wonderful people who are participating in the background to make this show happen. But I can't see it. But you know what? It's okay. Because what we're going to do is we're going to get into this conversation, and we're going to share that information at the end of the conversation. So we're going to get started. And the very first question with Tony Mobley on Conversation with Tony Mobley is always, who is our guest? So today, who is Shontelle Jackson, EDS, educator extraordinaire, an old colleague of mine? So who is Shontelle Jackson? Thank you, Shontelle, for being with me today.
Definitely. Thank you, Tony, for having me. And it is super great to be able to see an old colleague and share with your guest. I am, of course, Shontelle Jackson. And if I'm asked, who is Shontelle Jackson, I would start with the same thing my mom told me years ago. You're a child of God first, and the rest of it, figure it out. So I am a child of God. I am James's wife. I am Caleb and Jacob's mom. And then I am an educator. I am forever trying to spread my joy. I think God gave me a gift of gab and gave me a lot of sunshine and joy to go with it. So I use that to educate others, to provide a service, and just be me. So I am Shontelle.
Well, I want to say that you are, when the first time I met you, I was working as a paraprofessional, and I was working as a one-on-one paraprofessional for a unique situation in Atlanta Public Schools. And so this individual required a one-on-one paraprofessional that had a college degree, and that this person had to be, I had to be with him everywhere he went. And he started out at the Marcus Center, and we spent almost 2 years at the Marcus Center before we actually went back to our regular school location. But one of the things that I remember meeting you, that you were such a sharp young mind, and I was amazed at your depth of compassion for your students and your intellect. And I just want to say, I don't think I ever told you that at that time, but I was like, wow, this is a young person that if I ever decided to become a teacher, I wanted to sort of mold myself after. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for being who you are.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that. Honestly, that is not, like, my goal is really just to provide a great service with the smile and give kids what I want my kids to be able to get, no matter, what the disability or ability is. I am such the person to tell you there's no diss in most of my kids' abilities. So they just are who they are, and we meet them where they are, and we work hard for them.
All right. So our next question, you're very welcome. Our next question is, how did you get started in education?
Wow. That's in a roundabout way. Let's start there. If you read my resume and saw the degrees that I started with, it would not have been education. I started out as a sociology major in public health. I thought I wanted to be a hospital administrator. And then shortly after college, I got married and we had kids, and then we moved back to Georgia, and then I needed a job. And when I needed a job, I became a paraprofessional, and I explained to the principal that I could only afford to be a paraprofessional for 1 year. And then my real life needed to make more income, just being candid. And he said, well, if you're a great paraprofessional, I can help you become a teacher. And in 2006, I was a paraprofessional. By 2008, I was fully certified to be a special ed teacher and have not turned back since.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So you started out as a paraprofessional and have been elevated to a teacher, and now you are a program specialist?
Correct. Program specialist.
And what does that mean?
Well, program specialist is, I specialize in all programs as far as all programs that fall under the umbrella of special education. That would be your autism programs, that would be your self-contained programs, your mild, moderate, resource co-teaching programs. I assist teachers and support teachers in teaching them how to teach our students and gaining good resources, like where to get your toolbox of resources from.
Very cool. So we have a question from Clylock Lopez Waterman of Maryland. Thank you for what you do for the world, Ms. Jackson. When a student has limited words, what are the languages you use for compassion, learning, and understanding?
Wow. First of all, you're welcome, and thank you for saying that. When a student has limited language or limited words, gestures are used for language a lot. The language I always use is listen, not only with your ears, but we have to learn to listen with our hearts and our eyes, with your eyes wide open. Pay attention to the slight turn of heads. Pay attention to the small size, the blinking of the eyes. I like to also incorporate technology. Lots of my students have been introduced to technology just for that purpose, because they had limited words. Biggest thing is students start to have behaviors or shut down one way or the other because of lack of or limited language or ability to express the language. And we just, as their providers or service persons, care persons, we have to listen with our entire bodies, because there's something being said. It is definitely being said. We just have to figure out how to hear it.
Absolutely. We have another question from Clylock Lopez Waterman. What is the most important thing a student has taught you?
Most important thing a student has taught me is it is okay to not be perfect. It is okay to drop the ball and just pick it up and try again. Honestly, in life, my students every single day. Ironically, today I was in a meeting and we were talking about students who were having difficulty with subject areas. And the biggest thing, we had a person come in that specialized in autism that was training the trainers basically. And she was trying to tell us that with kids, we always want them to like make no errors. And like make the errors, allow them to, she was talking about a kid throwing a cup, allow them to throw the cup. Just don't say, go pick up the cup, pick the cup up and say, hey, yeah, it's a, because the thing was, is to teach them it was a cup. So you pick the cup up and just show them it's a cup and not even pay attention to the behavior itself of throwing the cup, because that's not what we're working on. We're working on identifying a cup. And we have to just remember to, it's okay. Start over, pick it up, try again.
Okay. Can you explain what an IEP is?
An IEP is an individual educational plan. And I have to remind myself, my colleagues, my teachers, my parents, it is just that, individual. It is important that parents understand that it is an individual plan, because that means as their student's advocate, they can require that, request that, almost demand that when necessary. It just depends on what your particular student or person you're caring for needs. And it's truly to access education within the way we use them in the public setting. We also write IEPs for private schools as well. However, it is truly written individually for whatever setting you're in.
So there is no copy cutter method for doing IEPs. Each person has a specialized individual plan.
Individualized plans. You individually talk about, let's say we're writing my IEP, we would individually talk about my strengths, my weaknesses, or my needs, and every accommodation, modification plan that is put in place is going to be specific for Shontelle. And even if there's someone else in the world named Shontelle, theirs would be different from mine.
What is the are the parents a partner in the IEP?
Parents, yes, definitely are partners in IEPs. Have to be partners. I would always start my IEPs with, especially beginning of the year and new to me type of students. I would tell their parents, "Hi, I'm your co-parent for the next 180 days." Because if the parent and teacher are not on board, it's going to be a very, very hard 180 days.
Yep, I can imagine. Okay, so Clyde Lopez Waterman from Maryland is back again. He says, many students who are neutral, diverse, have enhanced abilities. How do educators best bring those forward?
I think that could be best brought forward through creative learning. Allow students, when we're talking writing, sometimes students I'm going to refer back to the limited language. Students that have the limited language may not be able to verbalize, but they may be able to draw a picture to express what they are thinking, or respond to a question even. I had students in previous years, especially when I started in the Atlanta public school system, that their sentences were completely written in pictures. But if you can, if the pictures are where you can understand them, and that was how they responded to me. Their ability to vocalize words was not there. There was no electronic device at that time because I just gotten into the school system, so it wasn't in place yet. But by the time I left, it was. But there was no, AAC device or any kind of assistive technology to allow them to speak with some other device. So I had to figure out the best way to figure out what they were saying, because biggest thing to me is it's the ABCs for me. Is the student okay as far as their health is concerned? Are they okay as far as have they eaten? Are they changed, or all those things? Now, can you talk to me? Can you tell me what's wrong with you? Now we have to figure out a way for our kids to communicate. And if pictures are it, let's draw. If typing it up, if coding it. I've had kids who could take computers apart and decode the programming of the computers or whatever system we were working on, and had to go back and fix it because they messed up my stuff. But they would fix it. Once they messed it up, they'd go back and fix it and laugh at me in the process.
I'm curious. In my classroom, I had a high school autism class, and I had actually 3 classrooms. So the first classroom was a traditional regular classroom where we did our work and paperwork, and we used primarily iPads and other assistive technology devices in that room. But I also had 2 other rooms. One room was made like an actual house. And it had a bed, a kitchen, dining room, pantry with actual food in it. And then we had another classroom that was like a work site, a factory where there were all kinds of tools, big screws, blocks, machinery, nothing that could, injure the students, but it was preparing them for the work world. And I had high school students. And I was just wondering, in your new location, are those kinds of things in place at the schools?
Those things that you're talking about, I was a huge part in Atlanta Public Schools when those things were implemented. I worked directly with your occupational therapist. I went and begged and wrote grants and went to the board and jumped on top of tables and chairs and asked for all of those things to be put in place. So when I left there, I came to this side of the world and things were a little different. So they are not completely in place in every classroom now. However, a lot of those things are starting to be introduced. I think my battle as an individual educator is, I believe it is super important to teach the whole kid and to understand that our kiddos, whether they're in elementary school or getting ready to leave high and get ready to exit at 21, 22, we have to prepare them for this world we live in. And in that preparation, we need wherever they're going for 5 out of 7 days a week to look like what's gonna be on the other side of it all. So I am over here ecstatic that you even say that that's the way your classrooms were, because I recall begging for trailers, like the portable trailers, to get a work site. And
Right.
I recall working directly with our occupational therapist. I used to call her, she had the Midas touch because she could get anything I wanted with respect to like those tasks that you're talking about. And I'm overjoyed that they're still even doing it.
Well, that was I last worked for APS in 2013. So that was in place, and I was the teacher in that classroom for 3 years. So it was, it was in full effect, and it was definitely a great situation for the students who were able to utilize that environment. So we have a question from Laura Thompson. When teaching students, how do you deal with the student realizing that they are different and that people treat them differently?
I teach students and I teach teachers to teach a child that they have an IEP. It's okay. It's no different than we all have taxes. We have jobs, so we all file taxes. It's one of those things that everyone has, or potentially everyone could have. Just because I have an IEP doesn't make me different. I get a report card. I'm gonna get a job. I'm just gonna get things that meet me where I am. And especially for those, and when I'm gonna veer on the side of Laura, speaking of students who are more socially typical, those particular students, I think it's super important at about 13 when we start doing the transition. I honestly think transition should be done at 6th grade. I don't care how old you are. At 6th grade, students should, I think, be a part of their IEP, and they should have the ability to say, I have an IEP, my disability is this, these are my accommodations, please provide these accommodations to me. And the other thing I do is I also equipped my high school students with the knowledge that with that IEP comes vocational rehab, which is free money for school, free training. Those people don't have that. And just think about the things you do have that those people who are potentially picking on you don't have, and just one up them. I mean, it is what it is. We have to meet them where they are.
Okay. Thank you for that. We have a question all the way from Warwick, Australia, from Zachary Sorenson. Have you been a Christian all of your life? But I haven't heard of paraprofessional. Please explain what it is.
I'm not sure
Okay.
if I understand
I
the
think
question.
he's asking about
Paraprofessional.
paraprofessional. Yeah. So in some places it's called teacher support or
Mhm.
teacher
Aid.
assistant,
Mhm.
a teacher's aide. But that is the term, Zachary. So you're not so Shontelle and I both initially started out as paraprofessionals, and then we became teachers, and then she kept going. And um, but what I want to say, if you want to talk about faith, Zachary, you can feel free to ask another question, and Shontelle and I both will speak to that.
Definitely.
We have a question from Clark Lopez Waterman. How and what do you teach the parents when they first learn about diagnosis of their learner?
First thing I teach a parent, or I encourage a parent to do, is breathe. It is important to breathe and know that no matter whether there is a diagnosis or no diagnosis, you still have a blessing and you still have a job to do. And now it's time for you to muscle up, learn as much as you can about your child's disability or disorder diagnosis, whichever one that is stated on that cute little piece of paper they fill out for us. But once you find that diagnosis, do the research. And also, I say, get the interventions early. It is super important to provide a child with interventions early. There is a grave difference between a child who started out with interventions at age 3 with autism at age 30 than a child who interventions were introduced at age 13 at age 30. It's just a grave difference. The biggest difference, I think, is the child is kind of more pliable. I call it. They're more pliable when they're younger. So they absorb more. So they're more resilient when it's time to transition to those more learned tasks that's going to make them more productive as adult individuals. So breathe and learn. Read a lot, and don't always just go with everything you hear. Like, just because so-and-so's child was diagnosed with autism and lives at home at 32 and requires hands-on care and requires someone to assist them, does not mean that that is inevitable for your child. You're individual. That's when I roll back to, ma'am, sir, your child is going to get an IEP, which is an individual plan specifically for your child.
And I just want to emphasize that every single person is different. And every single person that is on the spectrum is different. And the needs are different. The experiences are going to be different.
Mm-hmm.
And so don't get locked into, as Shontelle said, don't get locked into thinking that your child or your family member is going to be locked into a particular lifestyle, because we are in this cutting age of technology, and there are all kinds of different things that continue to be developed to support people with disabilities. So be positive, be encouraging.
I'm sorry,
go
I
ahead.
would add to that to say that different and different daily. That's the one thing where I fell in love with autism was one day I get one student, the same kid, I'm talking about the same student each day. He walks, let's call him Johnny. Johnny walks in on Monday and he's one way. He walks in on Tuesday, he's a different way. And on Friday, he's a whole different way from Monday. But I love it. And I love that dynamic of it because it keeps us all on our educational toes. And 2, it gives us the opportunity to exercise your muscles so that you are better and can become the best at what you're doing and provide the best service, not just for him, but for every kid you touch.
Absolutely. And one of the things that it does is it keeps the educator, like you say, on their toes. And a lot of times, particularly in different jobs, sometimes we get comfortable. We get too comfortable. But in a classroom like you're describing, that's not going to happen, because you never know what you're going to experience from day to day.
Exactly.
We have a question from Taylor Sunderhouse, Cincinnati, Ohio. Please explain the process of declining your diploma and the benefits of students on IEP get after 4 years of high school.
I'm going to split that question, Taylor. So if I explain the process of declining the diploma, there are two ways you can say in it, you can decline the diploma. And this is state specific. Federally, everybody has the option. However, state specific, you can decline the diploma, and that would be your non-diploma track students. Those students can, depending what your state or your county offers, those students can participate in a credential program that will make them work ready, will allow them to be work ready, and they will be employable at the end of their high school career. Others have certificate of attendance. Others have different programs that will allow students to work through their vocational rehab or some other organization that provides assistance for adults with disabilities and or disorders. The second part of your question, what benefits do a student have with an IEP after 4 years of high school? If a student graduates high school with an IEP, they graduate high school and they go to college with an IEP, or it's called an ISP once they go to college. And when they go to college, they can go to the Office of Disability. And again, that's why I say it's important to teach your students to advocate for themselves. So let's say I graduated high school with an IEP, walked with my classmates, and then I decided that I went to Georgia Southern University. So I'm going to go to Georgia Southern University. First place I'm going to go when I get ready to register for my classes, I'm going straight to the Office of Disability and say, here's my ISP. These are the accommodations I need. How do I need to reach out to my professors to be sure I get these accommodations? As well as some states and counties have vocational rehab. There's money that's involved that's available for students who have either they graduate with a high school diploma, or if they exit without the high school diploma, there are services that are involved that will go and assist young adults and in the work world, teaching them how to work. So if I'm going to work, maybe say like at Publix or Home Depot, they may come in and work side by side and help teach that person their job until they're able to independently matriculate through that job themselves. And they still get paid the full rate. So you're getting that. You're continuing to get your SSI checks if they get the SSI checks. So there's a lot of resources that are involved, but the biggest thing I'm gonna have to say is when you're talking resources, you have to check your specific state, your specific county, because it's so different in every place. I didn't realize how different it was until I crossed states to go to work. Like I literally started in special ed in Georgia, and currently I'm in South Carolina, which is our bordering state. And it is totally different. Yes, the resources are similar, but who provides the resources is different. It's DDS in one place, it's somebody else in another place. It's a whole lot of acronyms in special ed. The biggest thing is to get knowledgeable and to get a caseworker. If you don't do anything else, ask your teacher or whoever you talk to in special ed in your building, how do I get a caseworker? If you get a caseworker, you're locked in for life.
So can you talk a little bit more about the caseworker? The caseworker, is that through Department of Family and Children Services?
It's not the same type of, not the Family and Children, it's Department of Disability. So with the Department of Disability, that's why a lot of parents shy away from getting a caseworker, because that's the first thing they think is defects. It's not that type of caseworker. It's the caseworker that's going to assist you throughout the process of going from, my child has a diagnosis, Now my child has a diagnosis that requires him or her to have some type of IEP or some type of intervention in the school setting. And now my child's diagnosis or disorder has gotten to the point where now we qualify for Social Security or disability benefits. That caseworker will assist you in making sure you reach out to all of those other entities in your county or state so that you can get all of the resources that are due to you or that are available to you.
Okay. Now, is this the same thing as an advocate for your child or student with special needs?
No, totally different. The advocate typically would be the person who would assist you as the parent to ask for the right things when you go to the meetings and the IEP meetings, to use the right verbiage. Your advocate would be that. Now, your advocate could assist you in accessing your caseworker or, setting you up with a caseworker or whatever, because typically your advocates in whatever area you're in have the most information, the most relevant information with respect to what services are available, say in Aiken County.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much for that.
Yes.
Laura Thompson is back. Clylac Lopez is back. Was there a time, let's say, when I was coming up, graduated high school in 1997, when people did not know or accept these diversities?
Okay, I graduated in 1997, and I recall in my school building, there was two type of persons with special needs. There was the self-contained classroom with yours, like what lower functioning or lower cognitive students. Those students went out into the community, they did some work. Those were the ones that would be at the football games or the basketball games, helping with the managing services or whatever. But to me, I don't think in my school, I can't speak of any other schools, I don't think that there was an issue with acceptance for those who were willing to accept anyway. I think there's a group of people, there are certain people that aren't going to accept, that are always going to look for the underdog and pick on the underdog. I think those people are just going to be. And I think that's where I'm just like, okay, that's cool, but I'm not going to be that person. And I recall even now, growing up, I had friends that were in both classes. I had friends who were on IEPs in my classroom. I'm still friends with people who were in those special needs classes. So for me, no, I don't think so. And even with the other students, I didn't see like there was a big difference between the two. Even the kids who had like physical disabilities, we still like went to break. We still had break when I was in high school. We would go to break and we'd still hang out, push the wheelchairs out and do whatever. It was just, we accepted them all, everybody.
I think because I'm quite a bit older than both of you, that my experience was a little bit different. And I remember very distinctly at that time, when I was coming up from high school, a lot of people who had disabilities were not in regular schools. So that came later. During my high school years and before, there were a lot of institutions that sort of threw everybody together. And by that, I mean throwing everybody together. There were these large institutions that put people with mental health issues and people that were on the spectrum into these large hospitals, centers, and these people lived in these centers. Mm-hmm. And I don't remember exactly what year it was, and maybe somebody who is listening to this conversation can share the year, but at some point they closed all of the institutions, and all of the people were who were special needs were pushed into the school systems. Mm-hmm. And that was part of the process for the ADA and the IEPs. that process started. The other side of that coin, though, was it did not necessarily provide a space for those who had mental health issues.
Yes.
And so a lot of those people who were in those institutions became the homeless
Yes.
that we now are seeing or used to see in years going by. So the homeless now that's another conversation that we'll have to have at some point. But at one time they were all in these large facilities throughout. Each state had a hospital or a facility where people with special needs and people who had mental health were all combined into these locations. And then that at one year that changed, and I don't remember. I think it has something to do with the Kennedy family wanting one of their relatives to be able to have equal educational opportunities, and that brought about ADA and all of the things that we're talking about tonight.
I totally understand. Now, I do recall my parents speaking of that. Now, I recall when MDR was the thing. And I say that because I don't like the word, so I'm not going to say it. When those students were not called students with special needs. But I still think as an educational service or entity, I think we are still struggling because as I was saying today, we're struggling with how do we as the school system, even special programs, provide supports and services for those students who not only have a special cognitive need or physical need, they also have a mental health need. And we are struggling, truly struggling, trying to figure out how to meet these particular students where they are. There were program specialists is my title. There were 5 of us in a room today, and all 5 of us at various schools throughout the different district had 1 to 2 students who have IEPs and also have mental disabilities or mental health issues that are showing up right now that are making the learning environment not. And that's a struggle. Like that was basically what the last part of our meeting today was about. How will we, as a system, in our particular system, how are we going to meet these kids where they are? So needless to say, that's our next, I call them spaghetti on the wall meetings, where we try to put all the kids we have and all the problems. If we could save the world, how would we save the world? And I think that's going to be our next spaghetti meeting talk, is how do we meet our mental health kids where they need to be with our IEP kids so that nobody loses? Because at this point, very limited learning is being done in that specific environment.
Thank you for sharing that. Laura Thompson is back again. Laura Thompson, as a student who is legally blind, now has a master's degree in higher education. How do we get more students with disabilities to get an advanced education?
Talk about it, Laura. Put it out there, Laura. You have to, because the thing of it is most students don't realize it unless they have parents or a support system that is truly advocating for them to get that, or even attempt the post-secondary degrees. Talk about it. And I, as a teacher and as a teacher support, I put it out there. Hey, these are the opportunities our kids can have. Your student is capable of post-secondary education. Why aren't we talking about it? Even if we have to start with junior college, let's start with junior college. If he fails, so what did you lose? If he succeeds, he's gained not only an associate degree, but so much confidence to move forward to gain additional degrees. So I just say, talk about it and talk about it loudly, Laura.
Yeah, I'm going to amen that and say that absolutely continue to talk about it. And the other thing I would say, Laura, you have been very visible in conversation with Tony Mobley. You have been very visible in a lot of other communities, and I would encourage you to continue to be visible. And people, because a lot of people don't even realize that you are legally blind, because you are so exceptional in all the things that you do. So continue to do what you do. Zachary Sorenson from Warwick, Old Australia is back. In the classroom, do you see the benefits of work with the individuals rather than making the students all do the standard curriculum when they don't really need it?
Yeah, I get your question. This is a question that we have often, especially when we were talking about the different tracks of education, diploma, non-diploma. I think it's individual. I think it's at that point is imperative for parents and students to advocate for themselves when that IEP is written, so that it best provides the plan for that individual.
Thank you. Taylor Sonderhouse is back. Taylor Sonderhouse from Cincinnati, Ohio. You can be given an IEP for many different reasons: high IQ, slow, etc. What are some key factors make an IEP good for a student?
I love it, Taylor. I am the advocate for gifted kids fall under special programs. High IQ kids fall under special programs. All your Quest gifted programs, that's a special program, not just your lower functioning kids. Some good factors are what works for me. I still say that is individual. Good factors for me may not be good factors for Tony. It just is completely individual. And if you don't have a teacher or LEA, which would be your administrator in that meeting, who's advocating for individual components to the IEP, that's time for you as a parent or you as the special needs student. Open your mouth and say, this is not what I need. This is what I need.
And I'm just going to add on to that by saying, seek out an advocate.
Yes.
It's important. It's important. Reach out to your community, your church members, your people that are in your community that can help you support your child, because the fact of the matter is you have a say in who comes and participates in the planning of the IEP. So you could have your pastor there, you can have your doctor there, you can have anybody that you want to be there that can be an advocate for your child. And that is what you want.
Yes.
And we all know that the squeaky wheel gets the oil.
That part.
Please explain spreading educational sunshine.
Okay, so if you have not noticed, I smile 100% of the time. When I'm upset, I smile. When I'm sad, I smile. When I want to cry, I smile. So I feel like God has placed me on this earth to spread as much sunshine as I can. And in the process, because I enjoy teaching, I get to spread my educational sunshine. So Tony got to get all of my educational sunshine when he first met me as a paraprofessional, because I was trying to teach paraprofessionals how to work with individual students who required intensive support, but needed to learn how to become independent all at the same time. And with that, it is a fine oil machine, but the more joy you put in it, guess what? People actually follow through. And you get people like Tony calling you later and saying how great you are. And I do appreciate it.
Well, it's true. So it's not, I'm not buttering you up. There's no benefit to me telling you this right now, right?
Right.
So the fact of the matter is that you made an impression on me, and I was privileged to hear other people talk about you, and it was extremely positive and uplifting and encouraging. And so I would just want to say thank you so much for being the person that you are. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Can you tell us about your continued professional development?
Okay, so currently I am a program specialist. What I have decided to do for my retirement plan is I am currently your local Georgia and South Carolina realtor. So I plan on taking my educational sunshine and spreading it to my new homeowners, buyers, sellers. I still educate. Matter of fact, in a couple of weeks, I'm providing education to try to close this homeless gap that we were just talking about, or I think it's the under home gap that I'm approaching to close at this time. I'm working with the mortgage broker and myself. We are sharing information about using Section 8 vouchers to purchase homes versus continuing to rent with those vouchers. Because there's power in money that's given to you by the government. Let's use it. So
Wow.
I think that I am continuing just to spread my educational joy, and I'm spreading those wings a little further. I think I was in the classroom. I've gotten the opportunity to be outside of the classrooms. And now I think it's time for me to hit my community.
Sounds great. Great. Let's see. What is the importance of an advocate for special needs students? We kind of talked about that already, but if you want to share some more information about that.
I would say the importance of an advocate are two things. One, a parent can be the best advocate. If a parent is knowledgeable and understands the laws, the terminology, go for it, advocate for yourself. But I also think it's super important that if that terminology is if there's gray area in there for you, please reach out to an advocate, even if it's just reaching out and asking questions to be sure. Like I have friends now that over years that I've worked with, they still call and like, hey, Shontelle, what does this mean? The biggest thing is learning the verbiage. It's kind of like reading a document from a lawyer. You know how they write those contracts in lawyer jargon? And if you don't know what the hens and the haws mean, you're confused. Same thing with an IEP. If you don't know what those acronyms mean, you're confused. So it's good to have an advocate or someone who's knowledgeable of that to help you decipher through that in order to provide the best individual plan for your loved one.
And I'm going to say what's already been said again. Parents, get your advocates and get your case managers.
Yes.
Get them.
Yes.
Your child is the most important thing for you. And you need to get as many resources as you can.
Yes.
Okay. So the next question is, can you share a past success story and a recent one?
Okay, so past success story probably would be my very first year teaching. I had a student who was had an emotional disorder. So he was in what would be your separated class where all of your difficult behavior students are. So I met him in the 6th grade. We were separated as teacher student in the 7th grade, but I met him again in the 8th grade. His issue was not, his behavior stemmed, that biggest thing for me was to learn where the behavior stemmed from. It stemmed because the boy couldn't read. So I asked his mom, he went into the typical matriculation of students and did like co-teaching once he got to high school, but his 8th grade year, he was going to get put out of school. So I talked to his mom and I was like, hey, I became his advocate. I said, Mom, can I put him in my self-contained class for the remainder of his 8th grade year? And I'll assure you he'll get the standards and he will learn how to read by the time he leaves here. So I went and we worked from the beginning of his 8th grade year, well, about maybe 6 weeks into his 8th grade year until the end of it. By the time he left, he could read on the 5th grade level. And I was like, I can promise you 5th grade because that's what the newspaper is written on in all job applications. When he graduated from high school, his mom sent me a picture of him in his cap and gown and said he was going to junior college.
Fantastic.
And so, and I have a teacher. Most of my stories now are going to be teachers. I have teachers who are advocating for their students. My thing is, it's okay to be an advocate for your student. No, you're not their parent, but you can still advocate for your student and keep your job. You're not doing anything wrong by saying, this is what the student needs. Here's all you're doing is clearly stating, here's where the student is. This is what the student needs. Parent, now, and then you just tell the parent, you say it in the confines of an IEP meeting. The IEP team has to make a decision. What accommodations are we going to put in place to meet this need?
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. We have another question from Zachary from Warwick,
Okay.
Australia. I have a CP and I have been out of school for 9 years and did as a normal schooling, but I see a broken system even over here.
Unfortunately, Zachary, I completely agree with you. The system, as Mr. Tony was explaining to us, the way the system started was difficult we have to break that apart in order to successfully use the pieces to create a system that works for our individual students we need to meet. It is a system that is going to be broken for a long time, but I think it is our jobs as educators, advocates, and those who love to provide services for these students or these adults even. It's our jobs to meet the system where it is and make it better. Advocate for it, force systems to change. Like I was saying, even today, the 5 women that were sitting in that room today, we're not stopping until some things are changed. And
That's
all
fantastic.
of us have pretty much the same attitude about it because students aren't learning. We're not growing productive citizens if we're not meeting them where they are.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. And the next question is, what is next for Shontelle Jackson?
God only knows. I am definitely one of those people who move my feet when God says move my feet. Right now, I am going to continue to be a program specialist. I love what I do and where I do it. So that's what I'm going to do. I have about 9 years until I am able or add enough years to retire from the state of South Carolina because it's 25 instead of 30 like in Georgia. So I only have 9 years. And by then, my goal is to have touched enough lives through real estate where that can be my new thing, my new educational sunshine.
All right. All right. And what do you want parents and educators to know about special education?
Special education is not a death sentence. It is not a forever sentence. It is our goal as special education professionals to meet our students where they are, and it is our goal to foster their independence, and we want to work ourselves out of a job. I explain to paraprofessionals all the time, it is your job to work yourself out of a job. You're successful when your students are independent, that they can use all of those accommodations and strategies, tricks of the trade independently and be successful. That's when we are successful in special education. If it were a perfect world, I'm sure all of us would be able to do that. But yeah, I think parents should know. And I think the things that you pointed out, make sure you are knowledgeable, make sure you get your advocate, and please, oh, please, oh, please get your case managers. Just so, because there are so many opportunities and so many resources that I'm looking at parents of students that are 21 and exiting in 6 weeks, and you're just getting the case manager and the waiting list is 9 years long. What are you going to do for the next 9 years?
Wow.
That's the question. And that's just in the little pocket of South Carolina I'm in. That's not saying if you're looking at the metropolitan areas like the Atlanta area. You got to think about how, yes, there are a grave number of resources, but there are also a lot of people in Atlanta who need those resources. So they don't really balance out. The need definitely outweighs the resources. So the faster you get in there and get on that waiting list, the faster you're going to be able to lock down and solidify some of those resources and services you're going to have access to.
When should they start?
ASAP. If my child gets a diagnosis, I'm reaching out. What can they tell you? The Department of Disability can tell you your child does not qualify. Thank you so much. And then something else comes up and my child gets an IEP. I'm reaching out again. Can I just get a case manager? Because the earlier your child is on there, the longer they're on there, which means the more services they can get. I know there's one specific service in South Carolina. It's called Tri Development. They'll tell you they're from 9 months to 90 years old. They provide services from birth to 90 or 100 or however life. They provide services. And that's one of the services that I was talking about, that I referred to, that would go into the jobs with your adult loved ones and stay and work side by side with them and teach them those jobs, and will not leave them until they're ready to fly on their own. That is their job. Their job is a work. I don't remember the exact title, but their job is to go in and coach. They're coaches, they're work coaches or work site coaches or something like that. But that's their job, is to go in and teach the person with disability, whether it's adult or it's typically an adult at this age by that time, or a young adult who's learning a job, maybe in a factory or maybe at a store or hotel. Teach them how to go clean the rooms at the hotel, teach them how to run the register or do the night audits or whatever. That's their job. That's all. They don't have like somebody else to report to. And no, their job is to teach your child or your person, loved one, until they're able to fly on their own. It's out there. You just got to reach it.
Thank you so much for your responses, and thank you so much for being here with me today. I wish we had more time so we could talk about some of these resources and suggestions for adults with special needs, because that is a conversation that is definitely worth having.
Yes.
So again, thank you so much for being here with me today. And I just want to share with our radio listening audience and those who are on LinkedIn Live and YouTube that this is episode 76 of Conversation with Tony Mobley. And we are so thankful to the office hours community and Alex Lindsay in particular for the video professionals that support Conversation with Tony Mobley. We can be heard on Z98.1 FM, LinkedIn Live, and YouTube. And we want to thank Dr. Messina Morris for our great conversation last week on the metaverse. And coming up next week, we are going to have a conversation with, and this, let's listen carefully now. We are going to have a conversation with Dr. Nakisia Hammond. She is a psychologist, and the conversation is going to be about mental health post-pandemic. That's right. You heard what I said. And so again, we want to thank my friend Shontelle Jackson, ED.S, for being here with me today. Thank you so much. And the credits should be rolling now. And special thanks to all of those who are watching Conversation with Tony Mobley and listening to Conversation with Tony Mobley. You don't want to miss this conversation next week with Dr. Hammond. Please tune in. Take care. Good night. God bless. Bye-bye.